The metallic clang of the M4 carbine hitting concrete echoed through the combat training center like a judge's gavel. Instructor Drake stood over the weapon, arms crossed biceps straining against his tan instructor's shirt. His shadow fell across the small woman kneeling on the floor. Her faded blue work uniform darkened with sweat hair, pulled back in a tight regulation, perfect bun. "Hey, sweetheart!" Drake's voice boomed across the facility, drawing attention from everyone within 50 feet. "What's your rank, Dust Bunny, first class?" 4 instructors behind him erupted in laughter. Lieutenant Morrison, lean and sharp-featured, nodded approvingly. Chief Petty Officer Williams slapped his thigh. Sergeant Hayes turned toward a cluster of trainees near the pull-up bars, projecting his voice. "That's what happens when you let civilians on base, boys. Standards drop." Sarah Chen didn't lift her head. She continued pushing the mop across the already clean floor, each stroke measured and methodical. Her small frame, 5'4", maybe 125 pounds, seemed to shrink further under their attention. But Master Chief Rodriguez, a 25-year veteran standing near the equipment, Lockers found himself narrowing his eyes. Something wasn't right. The way she held that mop grip, firm knuckles, aligned elbows at efficient angles. The way she knelt, spine straight shoulders, squared head, maintaining peripheral awareness even while appearing submissive. That wasn't the posture of a cleaning lady. That was a combat crouch. The sharp click of heels on concrete announced Jessica Park's arrival. The commander's aide moved with the confidence of someone who controlled access to power. Her perfectly pressed khakis and immaculate cover projected authority she'd never earned in the field. She paused beside Drake, clipboard tucked under one arm, and cast a dismissive glance at Sarah. "Instructor Drake, don't waste your time with these people." She gestured vaguely at Sarah without making eye contact. "We have drills scheduled for 1400 hours. The Admiral wants a readiness report by 1600. Drake bent down and retrieved the M4, his movements theatrical, designed for his audience. He checked the chamber with exaggerated precision, then held the weapon up like a trophy. "You're absolutely right, Miss Park. Some people are born for greatness." He glanced back at Sarah, his smile sharp. "And some people are born to clean up after it." Sarah's hand stilled on the mop handle. For 3 seconds nobody spoke. The only sound was the distant cadence of trainees running formation outside their boots, striking pavement in synchronized rhythm. Then Sarah stood one fluid motion, no hands for support, rising from a full squat to standing position without visible effort. Rodriguez's jaw tightened. That was a pistol squat. SEAL-level movement. His eyes tracked her more carefully now, taking in details he'd missed before. The way she'd automatically positioned herself with her back to the wall, the way her eyes had already mapped every exit, the way she held herself at what looked like modified parade rest, even while gripping a mop. 20 minutes from now, everything would change. But for this moment, Sarah Chen simply picked up her cleaning caddy and moved toward the weapons lockers, silent as a ghost, invisible as air. The afternoon sun slanted through the high windows of the CTC, casting long shadows across the training mats. 15 trainees occupied various stations, some working the heavy bags, others practicing room-clearing techniques with plastic training weapons. 6 instructors moved among them, correcting form-barking encouragement that sounded like threats. 3 support staff lingered near the entrance clipboard, warriors documenting everything for bureaucratic posterity. Sarah worked methodically through her assigned section, wiping down equipment that would be covered in sweat and grime, again within the hour. She'd learned to time her movements to the rhythm of the facility, to be present but invisible there, but not noticed. For 3 months, this had been her routine. Wake at 0500, report to the maintenance office at 0600, clean until 1800 hours, return to her small apartment off base, sleep, repeat. Nobody knew, nobody suspected, and that was exactly how she needed it. She reached the weapons rack where a dozen M4 carbines stood in neat formation. Drake had left one partially disassembled on the maintenance table. Upper receiver, separated bolt, carrier group, exposed, charging handle, removed. Careless. In a combat zone, that kind of weapon discipline would get people killed. But this wasn't a combat zone. This was San Diego, where the only threat came from paperwork and training accidents. Sarah's hand moved automatically, her fingers brushing across the upper receiver as she wiped the table. Her touch was light, but precise, checking the brass deflector, feeling the familiar texture of the mil-spec coating, her muscle memory cataloging every detail. She didn't realize Master Chief Rodriguez had moved closer until his voice, quiet but carrying authority, cut through the ambient noise. "How long you been working here, miss?" Sarah's hand froze for a fraction of a second before continuing its cleaning motion. 3 months, Master Chief." Her voice was soft, respectful, with just a hint of an accent that suggested Asian heritage but American raising. Rodriguez studied her hands, calluses on the palms and fingers, but not the kind from mops and buckets. These were tactical calluses, thick pads where pistol grips pressed rough patches where rifle stocks rested, rope burns along the edges where rappelling lines had carved their history into her skin. He'd seen those hands before on operators coming back from deployment, on team guys who'd spent more time holding weapons than steering wheels. "You handle equipment carefully," he observed. "Military background?" "No, Master Chief. Just try to do good work." The answer came too quickly, too practiced. Rodriguez opened his mouth to push further, but Drake's voice exploded across the facility like a flashbang. "All right, Nuggets, gather round. Time to see if any of you can handle stress better than my grandmother." The trainees scrambled to form up near the center mat. They were young, most of them barely 20, and their faces showed the peculiar mix of exhaustion and determination that defined SEAL candidates. They'd already survived months of basic conditioning. Now they faced the grinder, the phase that would determine whether they had what it took to wear the trident. Drake stood before them, hands on hips, his instructor persona cranked to maximum intimidation. "Chief Williams is going to demonstrate proper field stripping technique. You'll have 2 minutes to duplicate his performance. Anyone over 230 gets to enjoy extra PT tonight." Questions. Nobody spoke. They knew better. Chief Williams stepped forward, his movements crisp and professional. He was shorter than Drake, but carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd proven himself repeatedly. He picked up the disassembled M4 from the maintenance table, the one Sarah had been cleaning around, and began the demonstration. "Bolt carrier group." He slid the assembly home with practiced efficiency. "Upper and lower receiver alignment. Click. Takedown pins secured. Click, click. Charging handle. Slide. Press check." The bolt moved smoothly. "Weapon secured." He set the completed rifle down and looked at his stopwatch. 1 minute 42 seconds. That's instructor standard. You're aiming for under 230. The trainees lined up, each approaching their assigned weapons with visible anxiety. The first candidate fumbled the bolt carrier group, dropping it twice. 2 minutes 55 seconds. Drake's face showed disgust. "Hit the deck. Push-ups till I'm tired." The second candidate did better, but still exceeded the time limit. 2 minutes, 40 seconds. "You two, drop." By the sixth candidate, half the group was doing push-ups on the mat, their arms shaking with fatigue. Sarah continued cleaning, but her position had shifted slightly. She was closer now, close enough to observe her movements, keeping her within visual range of the weapons table. Petty Officer Kim, a young supply clerk with kind eyes and a permanent expression of concern, appeared at Sarah's elbow with a box of paper towels. "Thought you might need these," she said quietly. "Don't let them get to you. Drake's like that with everyone." "Thank you," Sarah replied, accepting the supplies. "I appreciate it. You're doing fine. Some people here—" Kim glanced toward Jessica Park, who was watching the training, with an expression that suggested she was evaluating livestock. "Some people forget that everyone's just trying to do their job." Sarah offered a small smile, but said nothing. Kim meant well, but kindness drew attention, and attention was exactly what Sarah couldn't afford. The training continued. Candidates struggled and failed. Drake's voice grew louder, more scathing. "My grandmother could do better, and she's been dead for 6 years." Williams shook his head, disappointment carved into his features. Morrison took notes on his tablet, probably documenting each failure for official records. Then young Tommy stepped up. 19 years old, maybe 160 pounds, soaking wet, with the kind of baby face that made him look like he should be delivering newspapers, not training to hunt terrorists. His hands shook as he reached for the weapon components. He fumbled the bolt carrier group, immediately nearly dropped it, caught it at the last second. "Pathetic!" Drake moved closer, invading Tommy's personal space. "Move those hands, Nugget!" "My grandmother," Tommy's rifle clattered to the table, pieces scattering. His face flushed red, a combination of embarrassment and frustration that every candidate knew intimately. "Start over, clock's still running." Tommy scrambled to gather the pieces. His hands shook harder now. Sarah, wiping down a bench 15 feet away, found herself making eye contact with him. Their gazes locked for just a moment. She gave the smallest nod, not encouragement, not pity, just acknowledgement. "You're not alone. Keep going." Tommy's shoulders straightened fractionally. He took a breath and restarted the assembly. This time his hands moved more smoothly. Bolt carrier group, receivers, pins, charging handle. He set the completed weapon down and looked at Williams, who checked the stopwatch. 2 minutes 28 seconds, you pass. Barely. Tommy's relief was visible. He moved to join the group, but not before glancing back at Sarah. She'd already returned to her cleaning, but something in that brief exchange had registered with others. Rodriguez saw it. So did Sergeant Hayes, whose eyes narrowed with something that looked like suspicion, or maybe just meanness. Hayes drifted over to where Sarah was working his boots loud on the concrete. He was 29, career logistics, the kind of NCO who'd found his power not in leadership, but in petty authority over those with less rank. "You missed a spot," he said, pointing to an area Sarah had already cleaned twice. Sarah looked at the floor, then at Hayes. "Yes, Sergeant." She moved to clean it again. "And another spot, right there." He pointed to a different area. "Yes, Sergeant." "You know what I think?" Hayes leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "I think civilians on base lower the standards, make everything soft. This used to be a place for warriors. Now it's a place for—" He gestured at her. "This." Sarah said nothing. She continued cleaning her face, expressionless, her movements unchanged. But Master Chief Rodriguez, still watching from his position near the lockers, saw her grip tighten on the mop handle. Just slightly. Just enough. The afternoon wore into evening. The overhead lights kicked on as natural light faded through the windows. Most of the trainees had been dismissed, sent to their barracks to contemplate their failures and prepare for the next day's suffering. But Drake, Morrison, Williams, and Hayes remained along with a handful of support staff. They had an advanced session scheduled instructor-level training, the kind of high-speed drills that kept their own skills sharp. Sarah should have finished her shift at 1800 hours, but Jessica Park had delivered a new checklist of tasks just before 1730. Her smile carrying all the warmth of a bureaucratic letter of reprimand. "These need to be completed tonight," she'd said, not asked. "The Admiral is visiting tomorrow morning. Everything needs to be spotless." So Sarah stayed. She moved through the facility like a shadow, present but unnoticed there, but not truly seen. She wiped down weapons that were already clean. She mopped floors that showed no dirt. She organized supplies that needed no organization. And she listened. The instructors had gathered near the central mat, running through close-quarters battle scenarios. Drake and Morrison took turns playing the role of enemy combatants, while Williams provided technical commentary. "Remember Fallujah tactics," Williams said. "Fatal funnel avoidance, slice the pie, high-low coverage at every threshold. Urban doctrine says—" Sarah's hand tightened on her mop handle again. Fallujah. The name echoed in her head, bringing with it memories she'd spent 18 months trying to suppress. Streets choked with rubble, the constant crack of sniper fire, the smell of burning fuel and cordite, the faces of team members who'd made it home and those who hadn't. She forced herself to breathe normally, to keep her expression neutral, to focus on the simple mechanical act of cleaning. That life was over. She'd chosen to leave it. She'd chosen this quiet existence, this invisible routine, this space where she could be near the community she'd lost, without having to bear the weight of what she'd done and who she'd been. "Hey, cleaning lady!" Drake's voice cut through her thoughts. "Hand me that upper receiver." Sarah looked up. He was pointing to the disassembled M4 on the maintenance table, the one she'd been working around for the past hour. She set down her mop and moved to the table, aware that all 4 instructors were now watching her. This was a test. She didn't know what kind, but she recognized the setup, the way they'd positioned themselves, the way their body language had shifted from casual to observant. The way Morrison had pulled out his phone, ready to record what they expected, would be entertaining incompetence. The disrespect you just witnessed. It gets worse. Way worse. But here's what Drake and his crew don't know yet. They're not just mocking a janitor. They're insulting someone who saved more lives than they've taken breaths. Someone whose mission files are so classified, even admirals don't have clearance. If you want to see the moment their world flips upside down, and trust me, it's coming, smash that like button right now. Because what happens when she finally reveals who she really is? It breaks the internet. Every single time. Sarah reached for the upper receiver. Her hand moved automatically, fingers wrapping around the component with a grip that was neither tentative nor overeager, just correct, firm, practiced. She lifted it, and for a fraction of a second, her thumb brushed against the brass deflector, in a motion that spoke of countless repetitions of muscle memory built through thousands of hours holding exactly this kind of weapon. She handed it to Drake. Their eyes met briefly. His showed condescension mixed with amusement. Hers showed nothing at all. "Thanks, sweetheart," he said, the endearment somehow managing to sound like an insult. Williams stepped closer, his instructor's eye catching what Drake had missed. "That was a proper grip," he observed. "Most civilians hold weapons like they're picking up trash. You held that like you've handled them before." Sarah's face remained blank. "I've seen the instructor's work," she said quietly. "I try to pay attention." "Smart girl." Morrison's tone suggested he thought she was anything but. "Maybe you should try harder, because from where I'm standing you're just taking up space that could be used by someone who matters." The words hung in the air, casual cruelty delivered with bureaucratic efficiency. Sarah absorbed them without visible reaction, but Master Chief Rodriguez, still present in his quiet way, felt something shift in the room's atmosphere. A tension that hadn't been there before, a stillness in Sarah's posture that reminded him of operators he'd known, the ones who'd seen things done. Things carried weights that couldn't be measured in pounds or kilograms. "Let's have some fun." Morrison gestured to the disassembled M4 component spread across the table. "Sarah, right, ever seen one of these put together?" Sarah's eyes moved to the weapon parts, then back to Morrison. "Yes, sir. I mean properly assembled, not just watching, actually doing it." "I understand, sir." Williams picked up on Morrison's game and grinned. "Come on, show us. It's just snapped together like children's blocks." The other instructors laughed. Even Jessica Park, who'd reappeared with her eternal clipboard, allowed herself a thin smile. Sarah hesitated. This was dangerous territory, but refusing would draw more attention than complying. And these men, for all their arrogance, were still her brothers in a way they'd never understand. They'd served, they'd sacrificed. They'd earned the right to some degree of respect, even if they'd temporarily forgotten how to extend the same courtesy to others. "If you'd like me to try, sir." "Oh, I'd love for you to try." Morrison stepped back, gesturing grandly to the table. "Gentlemen, make some room. We're about to witness either a miracle or the most hilarious failure of the week." 8 people now surrounded the maintenance table. The 4 instructors, Jessica Park, Master Chief, Rodriguez, Petty Officer, Kim, who'd appeared from the supply office, and Corpsman Jackson, who'd been setting up a first aid station in the corner. All of them watching, all of them expecting incompetence. Sarah approached the table. The components lay scattered across the surface: upper receiver, lower receiver, bolt carrier group, charging handle, takedown pins, buffer, spring, various smaller parts. A standard M4 carbine, the workhorse weapon of American infantry and special operations. She'd assembled hundreds of them, thousands. Had done it in complete darkness in sandstorms, under fire, with shaking hands and blood-slicked fingers. But that was before. That was a different life. That was a different person. Her hands moved. Bolt carrier group, first sliding smoothly into the upper receiver with the kind of motion that came from repetition so deep it lived in the bones. Upper and lower receivers, next alignment, perfect, no fumbling, no hesitation. Takedown pins secured with subtle clicks that spoke of components meeting their designated positions. Charging handle buffer, spring final checks. She set the completed weapon down and stepped back. Williams checked his stopwatch, his expression shifting from amusement to surprise to something approaching confusion. 47 seconds. He looked at Drake. That's instructor-level time. That's faster than most of the candidates today." Silence. Drake stared at the weapon, then at Sarah, then back at the weapon. Morrison's phone was still recording, but his smirk had faded. Jessica Park's clipboard had lowered slightly, her bureaucratic certainty cracking at the edges. "Do it again," Drake said. His voice had lost some of its theatrical boom. "You got lucky. Do it again." Williams disassembled the weapon, deliberately scrambling the components. Let's make it interesting, he said. Close your eyes until I tell you to start. Sarah closed her eyes. She could hear them repositioning the parts, hear the small metallic sounds of components being moved. She regulated her breathing, kept her heartbeat steady, maintained the calm that had carried her through a dozen years of operations, where mistakes measured themselves in body counts. Open. Go. Her hands moved again faster this time, because she no longer had to pretend hesitation. Muscle memory took over, the kind that got programmed through courses at Coronado and Quantico, through combat deployments in Helmand and Kandahar, through midnight drills where speed meant survival and hesitation meant death. Bolt carrier, receivers, pins, handle, complete. 39 seconds. Williams's voice carried a note of respect, now tinged with suspicion. Nobody gets faster on a second try. Nobody. That's not luck. That's training. Rodriguez moved closer to the table, his presence drawing everyone's attention. He was senior here, senior in time and experience, and that indefinable quality of having seen enough to know what mattered and what didn't. Sarah, he said quietly, where did you learn to do that? Sarah met his eyes. For just a moment, she considered telling the truth. But the truth was complicated. The truth had consequences. The truth meant losing the quiet peace she'd built over the past 3 months. The simple routine that kept her grounded, that kept her sane, that kept her functioning in a world that no longer included the man she'd loved, or the team she'd led, or the missions that had defined her existence. I read a lot, Master Chief, she said. And I watch. The instructors here are very skilled. Reading doesn't give you muscle memory, Rodriguez said. His tone wasn't accusatory, just observant. Watching doesn't make your hands move like they have done something 10,000 times. Hayes suddenly interjected, his voice sharp, with something that might have been anger, or might have been fear of having his worldview disrupted. Maybe she's a spy, enemy agent. That's why she's here watching our training, learning our techniques. The suggestion was absurd, but it landed in the room like a grenade. Jessica Park's expression shifted immediately, her bureaucratic instinct sensing an opportunity. That's actually a valid concern. Sarah, your background check showed employment history, but there were gaps, unexplained periods where your work history wasn't continuous. I had other jobs, Sarah said, different locations, where Virginia, North Carolina, California, doing what? Different things, restaurant work, retail, whatever I could find. The lies came easily because they were mostly true. She had worked those jobs in the periods between deployments, in the spaces when her team was stood down, or when she was recovering from injuries, or when the missions were so classified that she technically didn't exist for months at a time. The lies worked because they contained enough truth to feel authentic. But Jessica Park was already on her phone, pulling up some kind of personnel database. I'm filing a security inquiry. She announced, her voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who'd found a legitimate reason to exercise authority. Unauthorized personnel in restricted areas, suspicious behavior, potential security risk. Ma'am, Sarah said quietly, I have full clearance to be here. Maintenance staff. Clearance can be revoked, especially when someone demonstrates capabilities they shouldn't have. Jessica's fingers moved across her phone screen with the rapid-fire precision of a bureaucratic drone strike. Security Chief Anderson will want to speak with you. The room's atmosphere had shifted from amused mockery to something more serious. Master Chief Rodriguez frowned, clearly uncomfortable with how this was escalating. Petty Officer Kim looked worried, her earlier kindness now complicated by doubt. Even Drake seemed to have lost some of his bombastic confidence, replaced by the wariness of someone who'd realized he might have misjudged a situation. Only Sarah remained calm. She'd faced worse than this. She'd faced tribunals and review boards. She'd faced congressional inquiries into missions that officially never happened. She'd faced the families of operators who died under her command, and found the words to explain why their sacrifice had mattered. A security inquiry by a base functionary barely registered on her personal threat scale. I'm happy to cooperate, she said simply. Morrison was staring at his phone, scrolling through something with increasing intensity. His face had gone pale, his earlier confidence replaced by what looked like confusion mixed with disbelief. Drake, he said quietly, you need to see this. Drake moved to look at Morrison's screen. His reaction was immediate and visceral, eyes, widening jaw, clenching his entire body language, shifting from swagger to uncertainty. "That's not possible," he muttered. "The database has to be wrong." "What database?" Williams demanded. "What are you looking at?" But before Morrison could answer, the facility's main door opened and Security Chief Anderson entered, flanked by 2 military police officers. Anderson was in his early 40s, career Navy, with the kind of face that had seen enough gray area situations to know that official reports rarely captured the full truth of anything. He carried a tablet and wore an expression of professional neutrality that suggested this inquiry was already more complicated than Jessica Park understood. Sarah Chen. Anderson's voice carried authority without aggression. "Need to ask you some questions." "Of course, sir." Sarah's posture didn't change. She remained calm, centered, present, in a way that operators learn to cultivate the ability to be completely relaxed and completely ready simultaneously. Anderson consulted his tablet. "Your background check shows standard civilian employment history, but there are several gaps. Extended periods where you weren't working documented jobs. Can you explain those?" "I can, sir. Some of that time was spent overseas. I did some contract work." "What kind of contract work?" "Various assignments, security consulting, training assistance, support roles." The answers were vague enough to be meaningless and specific enough to sound plausible. Anderson clearly wasn't satisfied, but before he could push further, his radio crackled with a burst of static, and a voice that made everyone in the room stand a little straighter. "Anderson, this is Commander Hawthorne. Stand by for classified personnel verification. Do not proceed with standard inquiry protocols until I arrive. ETA 5 minutes. Anderson's expression shifted slightly, not quite surprise, but something close. He looked at Sarah with new assessment, his professional neutrality now tinged with caution. "Acknowledge, sir," he said into the radio. Then to Sarah, "Looks like we're waiting." The 5 minutes stretched like hours. Nobody left. Nobody spoke. The tension in the room built like pressure behind a dam. Everyone sensing that something significant was happening, but unable to articulate exactly what. Drake and Morrison stood together, periodically glancing at Morrison's phone and whispering. Williams watched Sarah with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle where half the pieces were hidden. Hayes shifted uncomfortably, his earlier swagger completely evaporated. Jessica Park clutched her clipboard like a shield, her bureaucratic certainty replaced by the dawning realization that she might have triggered something well beyond her pay grade. Master Chief Rodriguez remained near Sarah, not quite protective, but definitely present. Petty Officer Kim had moved closer too, her earlier kindness now mixed with curiosity and concern. Corpsman Jackson watched from his position near the medical station, his medic's eyes cataloging details the way Sarah held herself, the scars partially visible on her hands, the hearing aid in her right ear that he'd noticed weeks ago, but never thought to question. Tommy and 2 other young trainees had wandered back into the facility, drawn by the unusual gathering. They stood near the entrance, sensing something important, but lacking the context to understand it. The door opened again, Commander Hawthorne entered, and the room's energy changed instantly. He was 48, career Navy, a Mustang officer who'd come up through the enlisted ranks before earning his commission. His uniform was immaculate, his bearing was absolute, and his presence commanded the kind of respect that couldn't be faked or bought, only earned through decades of competent service. Behind him walked Gunny Williams. No relation to Chief Williams, a senior veteran with 55 years of age and 32 years of service etched into his weathered face. Gunny Williams had been everywhere, seen everything, and carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who'd proven himself so many times that he no longer needed to prove anything at all. Hawthorne's eyes swept the room, taking in the gathered personnel, the assembled instructors, the maintenance table, with its completed M4, and finally Sarah, standing quietly near the center of it all. His expression was carefully neutral, but something in his eyes suggested he'd expected this moment eventually. "At ease," he said, though nobody had been at attention. The phrase was more habit than command, a verbal tick from decades of military protocol. The medical monitor on the wall beeped steadily as Dr. Martinez reviewed Sarah's records on his tablet in the corner where he'd been quietly observing. 40% hearing loss, right ear, he muttered to himself, though several people heard. IED blast, Helmand Province. He pulled up the audiogram on his device, the kind of advanced diagnostic equipment that connected to secure military medical databases, cross-referencing injury patterns with treatment protocols. The screen showed neural pathway damage, the signature of blast-related trauma. She should be on full disability, Martinez said quietly to Corpsman Jackson. Instead, she's here, cleaning floors. Hawthorne approached Sarah directly. The crowd instinctively formed a wider circle, giving them space. Sarah Chen, he said, his voice carrying enough volume that everyone could hear, but maintaining a tone of professional courtesy. I need to speak with you, privately. Jessica Park found her voice first. Sir, security protocols require... I'm aware of the protocols, Miss Park. Hawthorne's interruption was polite but absolute. And I'm telling you that this matter is above your clearance level. Stand down. Jessica's face flushed, but she stepped back. Drake, however, didn't. With all due respect, Commander, we deserve answers. She's been lying about who she is, what she can do. Stand down, Instructor Drake. Each word landed with the weight of direct order, but Drake's frustration had built past the point of easy containment. Why, what do you know, Master Chief? He directed the question at Rodriguez, who'd been quietly supportive of Sarah throughout the entire confrontation. Rodriguez's expression hardened. Drake, you're about 3 seconds from insubordination. Check yourself. I just want to understand. Then shut up and watch, Rodriguez snapped. You might actually learn something for once in your career. The rebuke landed hard. Drake's face reddened, but he stepped back, chastened by the rare display of anger from a senior NCO who almost never raised his voice. Morrison was still staring at his phone, and now he turned the screen toward Drake. Whatever Morrison had found in the personnel database made Drake's eyes widen. That can't be right, Drake whispered. It says the file is classified. It says, holy cow, it says her records are sealed at JSOC level. Joint Special Operations Command. That's above your clearance. Hawthorne interrupted. Which is why you're going to put that phone away and let me handle this. But if she's intelligence, Jessica interjected, grasping at understanding CIA or NSA or something, then this makes sense. She's been observing our training gathering information. No, Chief Williams' voice cut through Jessica's speculation. Intelligence doesn't have these hands. He gestured towards Sarah. Look at her calluses. Those aren't from keyboards or surveillance equipment. Those are from weapons, from ropes, from tools of direct action. She's not intelligence. She's enough. Hawthorne's command silenced everyone. He turned back to Sarah, and for a moment something passed between them. Recognition, respect, shared understanding of things that civilians and even most military personnel would never comprehend. Sarah, I need to know, are you ready for this to come out? Because once it does, everything changes. Sarah was quiet for several seconds. Outside, the last light of day had faded completely, leaving the facility illuminated by harsh overhead fluorescence that cast sharp shadows and washed out colors. She could hear the distant sound of trainees running evening PT, their cadence calls carrying through the California night. She thought about the past 18 months, the deliberate anonymity she'd cultivated, the peace she'd found in simple work that didn't require command decisions or tactical planning or the weight of lives hanging on her judgment. But she also thought about Marcus, about her team, about the 17 missions that had ended with everyone coming home alive, about the one mission that hadn't, about the promise she'd made to herself that she'd serve with honor, even if that service looked different than it had before. I'm ready, sir, she said quietly. Hawthorne nodded. He glanced at Anderson. Security Chief, please document that I'm assuming authority over this inquiry under Special Operations Protocols. Classification level Echo Sierra Alpha. Anderson's eyes widened slightly. Echo Sierra Alpha. That was designation reserved for Tier 1 operators, for personnel whose very existence in certain capacities was classified. Understood, sir. Documented. Hayes, still trying to assert some control over a situation that had completely escaped his understanding, stepped forward. Enough games. Sarah, just tell us who you are. Stop being mysterious and just... He reached out, probably intending to gesture emphatically, or maybe to physically escort Sarah somewhere, his patience exhausted and his worldview crumbling. His hand moved toward her shoulder. Sarah's body reacted before conscious thought could intervene. 12 years of training of combat of situations where a hand reaching for you could mean a knife or a gun or an attack that you had to counter instantly. She didn't hurt Hayes. She didn't throw him or strike him or do any of the 100 violent things her training had ingrained. She simply pivoted, redirecting his momentum with gentle precision, using his own force against him in a movement so smooth it looked like dance. Hayes stumbled off balance. He grabbed at Sarah's shoulder to steady himself, his fingers catching the collar of her work shirt. The fabric was old, worn thin by months of industrial washing. It couldn't handle the sudden tension. R-I-P. The sound echoed through the facility like a gunshot. Fabric tore down the shoulder, exposing Sarah's upper back and right shoulder blade. And there, rendered in ink that had faded slightly but remained unmistakable, was a tattoo that made Gunny Williams gasp audibly. A golden seal trident. The symbol of naval special warfare. The badge that meant someone had survived the hardest military training in the world and earned the right to call themselves a Navy SEAL. Below the trident in bold letters, Task Force Phoenix. Below that, coordinates 34.4396 degree Newlands, 63.5859 degree Helmand Province, Afghanistan. 17 small stars in an arc pattern, each representing a mission, each marking classified operations that officially didn't exist. Dates 2009, 2015. And surrounding the entire tattoo, visible even in the harsh fluorescent light, was scar tissue, the distinctive pattern of shrapnel wounds, the signature of an IED blast, the physical record of a moment when Sarah Chen had nearly died doing a job that most people would never know she'd done. 3 seconds of absolute silence. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. The moment stretched frozen in time as 24 minds simultaneously recalculated everything they'd seen, heard, and assumed over the past several hours. Then Gunny Williams broke the silence with a whisper that carried the weight of recognition and reverence. Sweet Lord above, Task Force Phoenix. You're starting to see it, aren't you? The clues are adding up, but you haven't seen anything yet. The next 60 seconds will make you rewind this video 3 times. Subscribe and hit that bell, because when the truth drops, you'll want to be here for every reaction, every gasp, every moment of pure shock. This story is about to explode. The reactions cascaded through the room like a shockwave, each person processing the revelation at different speeds with different levels of comprehension. Drake's jaw went slack. His hand released Hayes's arm where he'd been steadying his fellow instructor. He stumbled backward 2 steps, his mouth working soundlessly before managing to stammer, No, you can't be... That's not possible." Morrison's phone clattered from his hand onto the concrete floor, the screen cracking, but nobody caring. His face had drained of color, going from healthy tan to paper white in seconds. "Operation Silent Dawn," he whispered. "Helmand Province. 73 coalition soldiers trapped behind enemy lines. August 12, 2011. They sent Phoenix." His voice grew stronger as memory supplied details. 17-hour firefight. Everyone said it was a suicide mission. Everyone thought Phoenix wouldn't make it out, but they did. They all did. 73 rescued, 0 friendly casualties. It was legendary. Chief Williams dropped into parade rest, automatically his body responding to recognition, before his mind fully processed what he was seeing. His eyes locked on the tattoo, scanning the details, the trident, the coordinates, the stars, the scars. 17 missions, he breathed. All classified, all successful. Phoenix was real. I thought, everyone said it was a myth propaganda, something Intel made up to intimidate the enemy. Hayes had backed up 3 steps. His earlier aggression completely evaporated. His mouth hung open, his face showing shock mixed with dawning horror at how badly he'd misjudged the situation. I thought she was just... Jessica Park's clipboard clattered to the floor, papers scattering. Her face cycled through emotions too quickly to track disbelief, shock, fear, the horrified realization that she'd just tried to file a security complaint against someone who apparently had security clearances so high that Jessica probably couldn't even access the relevant databases. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh no, 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 no." Commander Hawthorne's response was immediate and absolute. He stood at attention, his right hand snapping up in a crisp salute, holding the position with the rigid formality reserved for the most solemn military occasions. "Captain on deck!" The title hit the room like thunder. Captain, not former captain, not retired captain, just captain, because that rank once earned in special operations carried weight that transcended active duty status. Master Chief Rodriguez smiled, actually smiled, for the first time since the confrontation had begun. He snapped to attention beside Hawthorne, his salute just as crisp, his expression showing vindication mixed with respect. He'd known something was different about Sarah. Now he knew exactly what. Tommy pulled out his phone with shaking hands, starting to record. The device trembled so badly that the footage would later be almost unwatchable, but he couldn't stop himself. He was witnessing history, witnessing the kind of moment that changed lives and ended up in training courses as examples of what true service looked like. Petty Officer Kim gasped, both hands coming up to cover her mouth. Tears formed immediately, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming emotional impact of watching a hero she'd treated with casual kindness reveal themselves. "I gave her paper towels," she whispered to nobody in particular. "I gave Captain Chen paper towels, and I told her not to let them get to her. Oh my..." "Doctor." Martinez nodded slowly from his position near the medical station, pieces falling into place. The hearing loss, the weekly audio checks, the audiogram patterns. Now it makes sense. IED blast, Helmand Province. She should have been on full disability, should have been honorably discharged, should have been anywhere but here cleaning floors. He looked at Sarah with new understanding, but she needed to be near the community, near the teams, near the only family she had left. Corpsman Jackson stood from his crouch by the medical supplies, moving to attention, his hand rising in salute. "I read about Phoenix," he said, his voice carrying awe, "in classified briefings during advanced tactical medicine courses. They said Task Force Phoenix was a myth, a legend, something people whispered about, but nobody could confirm. One team, the hardest missions, the ones nobody else would take, extraction specialists, hostage rescue, deep reconnaissance. They said Phoenix never failed, never left anyone behind, and now, you're Phoenix." Instructor Lee, who'd been standing near the back, whispered, 17 combat missions, all classified, all successful. The tattoo, each star is a mission. Each one represents dozens of lives, saved hundreds of enemy combatants, eliminated operations so sensitive that even knowing they happened could compromise national security. The young trainees near the entrance stood frozen phones, out some recording, some just staring. One of them, a tall kid from Texas, dropped his water bottle. It hit the concrete with a hollow plastic sound that seemed impossibly loud in the heavy silence. Chaplain Foster, who'd arrived moments before the fabric ripped, spoke softly. "Captain Chen, I've heard the stories, the ones we're not supposed to repeat, the ones that get whispered in ready rooms and team buildings. Phoenix, always Phoenix. The team that went into hell and brought people back." Security Chief Anderson lowered his tablet slowly. He keyed his radio, his voice steady despite the visible shock on his face. "Confirmed. Echo Sierra Alpha, Captain Chen. All security inquiries are canceled. Repeat, all inquiries canceled. This is a cleared operator. This is way above my clearance level." Radio chatter exploded across the base frequency. Word was spreading, carried by Anderson's transmission, by Tommy's shaky video, by the dozen witnesses who were already texting and calling their friends and colleagues. Within minutes, everyone at Naval Base Coronado would know. Within an hour, the story would reach other bases. By morning, it would be everywhere. The environment had shifted completely. The harsh fluorescent lights seemed brighter, the concrete walls closer, the air heavier with the weight of shared recognition. The casual mockery and bureaucratic disdain that had filled the room an hour ago had burned away, replaced by something approaching reverence. This wasn't just about correcting a misjudgment. This was about confronting the reality that heroism looked nothing like what movies and television suggested, that the most capable warriors could be 5'4" women with quiet voices and patient eyes. That service came in forms that defied easy categorization or comfortable assumptions. And through it all, Sarah Chen stood quietly, her torn shirt exposing not just a tattoo, but a truth that she'd tried to keep hidden. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes dark deep, carrying weights that nobody else in the room could fully comprehend, moved slowly across the assembled faces, reading reactions, processing the moment, adjusting to a reality that had just fundamentally changed. Hawthorne lowered his salute, but remained at attention. When he spoke, his voice carried throughout the facility with absolute clarity. Captain Sarah Chen, SEAL Team 3, Task Force Phoenix Commander, 12 years of active service, Navy Cross recipient, 3 Bronze Stars with Valor Device, Purple Heart, Silver Star, Combat Action Ribbon with 3 stars, Presidential Unit Citation. He paused, letting each award sink in. Medical discharge eligibility following IED blast in Helmand Province, resulting in 40% hearing loss and traumatic brain injury. Declined full disability status, retired with honors 18 months ago. Rodriguez turned to Drake, his voice quiet, but carrying edge sharp enough to cut. You just mocked a woman who has more combat time than everyone in this room combined, including me, including the commander. She's done things we can't talk about, saved lives will never count, fought battles that officially never happened. And you asked her what her rank was. Drake's face had gone from red to white to a shade that suggested he might be physically ill. Captain, I have no excuse. I disrespected... He fumbled with his instructor badge, hands shaking as he removed it from his belt. I disrespected everything you represent, everything I'm supposed to teach. Here. He held out the badge. I don't deserve to wear this, not after how I treated you. Sarah looked at the offered badge, then at Drake's face. For the first time all night, she spoke with something approaching her command voice, quiet, still, but carrying authority that couldn't be questioned. Keep it, Drake. You're a good instructor, tough, demanding. That's what these trainees need. They need someone who pushes them past their limits, who shows them that comfort is the enemy of growth. She paused. What they don't need is instructors who judge books by covers, who confuse visible strength with actual capability, who forget that respect is something we give, not just something we demand. The rebuke was gentle but devastating. Drake's hands lowered, still holding the badge, his eyes showing the kind of shame that came from disappointing someone you suddenly realized deserved better. Williams approached carefully, as one might approach a senior officer or a dangerous animal, with respect tinged by caution. Captain, why work as why hide? The question was genuine, without judgment, just seeking understanding. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. The room waited 24 people holding collective breath. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of grief that 18 months hadn't fully processed. My husband, Lieutenant Marcus Chen, SEAL Team 7, KIA Kandahar 2 years ago. The words dropped like stones into still water ripples, spreading through everyone present. Several people's expressions shifted from curiosity to understanding to sympathy. Chaplain Foster nodded slowly. I remember Marcus, he said softly. I presided at his service. Good man, great operator. He spoke about you. Didn't use your name, operational security, but he spoke about his wife, about how she was the strongest person he knew, how she led from the front, how she never asked anyone to do anything she wouldn't do first. Sarah's jaw tightened slightly, the only visible sign of emotion. I couldn't leave, not completely. This base, these teams, it's the closest I can be to him, to that life, the work. She touched her hearing aid briefly. The cleaning work keeps me grounded, gives me purpose that doesn't require command decisions or tactical planning. Lets me be near the community without the weight of leadership. I wasn't hiding. I was healing. Rodriguez stepped forward. And nobody knew. You've been here 3 months, watching us train, listening to us talk, seeing everything. I wasn't spying, Sarah said quickly. I wasn't gathering intelligence or evaluating programs. I was just being close to something familiar, something that felt like home. But you were evaluating us, Rodriguez said. It wasn't an accusation, just observation. Whether you meant to or not, you saw our techniques, our methods, our mistakes. Sarah allowed the smallest smile. I saw good instructors doing hard work. I saw young men and women pushing themselves past what they thought possible. I saw a community that, despite its occasional arrogance, genuinely cares about preparing the next generation for real-world operations. She looked at Drake, at Morrison, at Williams. You're good at what you do. All of you. Sometimes you forget that everyone's fighting battles you can't see. Morrison approached his earlier confidence completely gone. His hands hung at his sides, empty, his posture radiating contrition. Captain Chen, my conduct was unacceptable. I failed to uphold the standards of this command. I failed to demonstrate the respect that everyone, regardless of position or appearance, deserves. He straightened slightly. I apologize, formally and completely. Sarah accepted the apology with a nod, saying nothing. Words weren't necessary. Morrison stepped back, his face showing relief mixed with continuing shame. Hayes approached next, moving slowly, his earlier aggressive energy replaced by something approaching humility. Captain, I've been in logistics for 15 years. I thought I knew what service looked like. I thought I understood what made someone valuable to the military. He pulled out a challenge coin from his pocket, a bronze disc commemorating his unit, his time, his service. I was wrong about everything. This is yours. Not because I think it's valuable enough to represent your service, but because it's all I have to offer. Sarah looked at the coin, then accepted it, her fingers closing around the metal. Thank you, Sergeant. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what we do after we realize we've made them. Jessica Park stood alone near her scattered papers, her clipboard forgotten on the floor. Her face showed the kind of devastation that came from having one's worldview completely demolished in real time. She opened her mouth several times, trying to find words, failing, trying again. Finally, she managed, I've already submitted my resignation to the commander. I can't, after what I did, after how I treated you, I can't work here anymore. I can't face myself. Sarah crossed the distance between them in a few quiet steps. She bent down, picked up Jessica's clipboard, and handed it back to her. Don't resign, Sarah said quietly. Everyone deserves a second chance. I'm giving you one. Use it well. Jessica took the clipboard with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. I don't deserve this. Maybe not, but I'm offering it anyway. Because that's what leadership looks like. Not holding on to grudges, not punishing people for honest mistakes, helping people become better than they were. Sarah's voice hardened slightly. But understand this, second chances aren't infinite. Use this one wisely. Rodriguez scrolled through his phone during the exchange, checking his investment portfolio. After 25 years in service, he'd learned the importance of financial planning, especially the kind tailored for military veterans with specialized retirement accounts and VA-backed investment vehicles. He'd seen too many operators retire without proper financial security. Smart money management, he'd told young recruits countless times. It's the difference between surviving retirement and thriving in it. He looked up from his phone, meeting Sarah's eyes. Captain, you mentioned healing. Are you okay? Really okay? Sarah considered the question carefully. Define okay. I'm functional. I do my job. I don't have flashbacks or night terrors. I honor Marcus's memory without being consumed by grief. So yes, by most metrics, I'm okay. She paused. But okay isn't the same as whole. I'm not sure I'll ever be whole again. And I've made peace with that. The honesty was disarming. Several people shifted uncomfortably, confronted by the reality that heroism had costs that couldn't be measured in awards or promotions. That coming home alive didn't mean coming home undamaged. Commander Hawthorne had been standing quietly, letting the interactions play out. But now he stepped forward again. Captain Chen, I'm formally requesting you join our training cadre as a consultant. Part-time. Your experience in close-quarters combat, in extraction operations, in leading teams, under extreme conditions. We need that expertise. These trainees need to learn from someone who's actually done the things we're preparing them to do. Sarah shook her head slowly. Commander, I appreciate the offer. I do. But I need the simplicity. The cleaning work helps me in ways that tactical instruction wouldn't. It gives me space to breathe, to exist, without constantly being Captain Chen, war hero. I need to be just Sarah for a while longer. Understood. Hawthorne's acceptance was immediate and without judgment. But the offer stands, anytime you're ready, any capacity you'd be comfortable with. And, Sarah, he paused, ensuring she was listening. You'll keep your cleaning position, with a significant raise, and full base access officially documented. No more questions about clearances or authorization. You've earned the right to be anywhere you want to be. Thank you, sir. Gunny Williams had been standing near the tattoo's reveal point, his eyes never leaving Sarah's exposed shoulder. Now he spoke his weathered voice, carrying the weight of someone who'd served through multiple conflicts and knew what real combat looked like. I was in Helmand, different sector, different unit, but we heard the stories. August 12, 2011. 73 coalition soldiers, Americans, Brits, Canadians, trapped behind Taliban lines after an ambush went catastrophically wrong. Command said extraction was impossible, said the terrain was too hostile, the enemy too numerous, the timeline too compressed, said we'd have to leave them and hope for prisoner exchanges later. He paused, his eyes distant with memory. Then someone mentioned Phoenix, said they'd go in. Command tried to stop it, said it was suicide, said they'd just be adding more bodies to the casualty count, but Phoenix went anyway. Sarah remained silent, her face carefully neutral, but her hands had tightened slightly at her sides. 17 hours, Gunny continued. That's how long the mission took. We monitored communications when we could when Phoenix wasn't operating under full radio silence. We heard firefights, heard explosions, heard calls for medical support. And then at dawn, on August the 13th, we heard the most beautiful words in military radio. Package secure, all souls accounted for, returning to base. His voice cracked slightly. 73 souls, every single one. Some of them couldn't walk, had to be carried. Some of them were barely conscious from dehydration and injuries. But they all came home, because Phoenix went into hell and brought them back. The facility had gone absolutely silent again. Even the ambient noise from outside had faded, or maybe people had just stopped noticing it. Tommy's phone was still recording, capturing every word, every emotion, every moment of this unexpected reckoning. Was it you? Tommy asked suddenly, his young voice cracking with intensity. Were you leading that mission Operation Silent Dawn? Sarah finally looked directly at him. I can neither confirm nor deny operational details of classified missions. That information remains above most clearance levels. But the tattoo shows that I served with Task Force Phoenix from 2009 to 2015, shows coordinates that might represent a significant location, shows 17 stars that might represent 17 missions. What those missions entailed, who was involved, what the outcomes were, that information stays classified. Potentially forever. Rodriguez smiled slightly. Spoken like someone who's been through congressional inquiries and security reviews. Several, Sarah admitted. It's part of the job when you operate in the gray spaces. When your missions officially don't exist, someone still has to make sure they were legal, ethical, and necessary. The reviews are thorough. Williams had been staring at his phone, scrolling through something with increasing focus. Captain, if you're willing, I'd like you to review our weapons training protocols. Not officially, not as an instructor, just look at what we're teaching and tell me if we're missing anything. Tell me if there are techniques, tactics, or mindsets that would help these trainees survive real-world operations. Sarah considered this carefully. It was a smaller ask than Hawthorne's offer, more contained, less likely to consume her limited emotional reserves. I'll think about it, Chief. That's all I can promise right now. That's all I'm asking. Just think about it. The group began to disperse slowly, people processing what they'd witnessed, what they'd learned, how their understanding of the world had shifted in the space of an hour. Some gathered in small clusters, talking in low voices. Others left entirely needing space to think. A few approached Sarah individually, offering handshakes or salutes or simply nods of respect. But Drake lingered, standing apart from the others, his instructor badge still clutched in one hand. He watched Sarah interact with people, saw the grace with which she handled the attention, the patience she showed even to those who'd mocked her hours earlier. Finally, he approached again, his earlier bombastic confidence completely absent. Captain, he said quietly, I need you to understand something. What I did, what I said, it wasn't just unprofessional. It was a betrayal of everything I'm supposed to represent as an instructor. I teach these candidates about honor, about respect, about looking beyond surface appearances to recognize true capability. And then I turned around and violated every one of those principles. He paused, struggling with words. I grew up poor. Trailer park in Nevada. Everyone looked at me and saw someone who'd never amount to anything. I joined the Navy to prove them wrong, made it through Bud S on my third try, earned my trident, became an instructor because I wanted to help others achieve what I'd achieved. His voice dropped lower, and somewhere along the way, I became the exact type of person I'd always hated. the one who judged by appearances, the one who assumed competence based on size or gender or job title. I became what I'd escaped from. Sarah listened without interrupting, her expression neutral, but not unkind. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Drake continued. I don't deserve it. I'm telling you that I see what I did. I understand how badly I failed, and I'm going to be better. Not because I got caught, not because you turned out to be someone important, but because you showed me what real strength looks like, what real leadership looks like, what I should have been all along. Sarah was quiet for several seconds. Then, Drake, you're a good instructor because you push people past their comfort zones. Don't lose that edge. Just remember that real strength comes in forms you might not recognize immediately. And the best leaders create environments where everyone, regardless of what they look like or what job they hold, gets treated with basic human dignity. I'll remember, Captain. I promise you that. Then we're good. Go home. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you've got candidates who need your expertise. Drake nodded, replaced his badge on his belt, and left. His shoulders were straighter than they had been in hours, despite, or maybe because of the humbling he'd received. The facility slowly emptied. Hawthorne left after ensuring Sarah didn't need anything. Rodriguez departed with a final salute and a promise to stop by tomorrow. Williams, Hayes, Morrison, and Jessica all left at intervals, each carrying their own version of the night's lessons. The trainees were the last to go, reluctant to leave, sensing they had witnessed something significant that would shape their understanding of what service truly meant. Finally, only Sarah, Dr. Martinez, and Corman Jackson remained. Martinez approached with his tablet, his medical professional demeanor softened by personal concern. Sarah, I need to ask. The audio checks the monitoring. You've been tracking your hearing loss progression? Yes, doctor. Weekly checks to ensure it's not deteriorating further. And you're managing okay. The hearing aid is sufficient. Most days, sometimes in crowded spaces or during high-stress situations, the sensory processing gets overwhelming. But I've adapted. I've learned to compensate. Martinez made notes on his tablet. I want to increase the monitoring frequency, bi-weekly instead of weekly. And I'd like to run some additional tests on your vestibular system. Balanced spatial orientation. IED blasts can cause long-term inner ear damage that doesn't always manifest immediately. Whatever you think is necessary, doctor. Jackson had been cleaning up the first aid station, but now he approached with a question that had clearly been bothering him. Captain, can I ask, when did you know that this was going to come out, that your cover was going to break? Sarah smiled a real smile, small but genuine. When Drake grabbed my shirt, the fabric was old. I knew it wouldn't hold. And once the tattoo was visible, she shrugged. There's no explaining that away. Task Force Phoenix was too distinctive, too well known among the community, even if most of the operations remained classified. Did you want it to come out? I don't know. Part of me needed the anonymity, needed the space to heal without everyone knowing my history, my losses, my scars, physical and otherwise. But another part, she touched her hearing aid again. Another part was tired of hiding, tired of pretending to be less than I am, not because I'm proud or arrogant, but because hiding takes energy. And I've been so tired for so long. The honesty was stark vulnerable in a way that Sarah rarely allowed herself to be. Martinez and Jackson exchanged glances, both recognizing the trust implicit in her admission. You should go home, Martinez said gently. It's been a long night. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, people will know. Now word will spread, you'll face questions and attention you've been avoiding. I know, but for tonight I just want to finish my cleaning route, complete the work I was assigned. It helps, the routine, the simplicity. Then we'll leave you to it. Martinez collected his equipment. But Sarah, if you need anything, counseling support, just someone to talk to, my door is always open. Thank you, doctor. They left, and Sarah was finally alone in the combat training center. She picked up her mop, now slightly dried out from being abandoned during the confrontation, and dipped it into fresh cleaning solution. She continued working through her assigned sections, wiping down equipment, organizing supplies, mopping floors that were already clean. The work was meditative, repetitive, familiar. It gave her hands something to do, gave her mind space to process everything that had happened, gave her spirit room to breathe without the constant pressure of being Captain Chen, war hero, legend myth, made flesh. She worked until 2200 hours, 2 hours past her scheduled shift end. When she finally finished, she gathered her cleaning supplies, loaded them onto her cart, and pushed everything back to the maintenance storage room. She locked up, signed out with security, and walked across the base toward the parking lot where her modest Honda Civic waited. The California night was cool, clear stars visible despite the light pollution from San Diego. Sarah stood beside her car for a moment, looking up at the sky, thinking about Marcus, thinking about the team members she'd lost over 12 years of operations, thinking about the 73 lives saved in Helmand and the 17 missions that had defined her career, and the person she'd been before the IED blast had stolen 40% of her hearing and forced her to confront a future without active service. "I miss you," she whispered to the stars, to Marcus, to the ghost of who she'd been. "I miss all of it, but I'm learning to be okay with who I am now, learning to find purpose in small things, learning that service doesn't always look like combat or command." The stars didn't answer. They never did. But somehow, standing there under the vast California sky, Sarah felt a measure of peace that had eluded her for months. Tomorrow would bring attention and questions and complications. But tonight she'd done her job, both the official one and the unofficial one, of finally letting people see the truth of who she was. She got in her car and drove home through empty streets, windows down, letting the night air wash over her. Her small apartment waited, one-bedroom, minimal furniture walls, decorated with a single photograph of Marcus in his dress blues, and another of her SEAL team during a rare moment of downtime. She'd shower, make tea, try to sleep, despite knowing that sleep rarely came easily these days. But tomorrow was another day. Another chance to navigate this new reality where her anonymity was gone, but her purpose remained. Another opportunity to figure out what service looked like when you were healing rather than fighting, supporting rather than leading, being rather than doing. For tonight, that was enough. Tomorrow would take care of itself. She locked her car, and climbed the stairs to her second-floor apartment. Inside, everything was exactly as she had left it, neat, organized, Spartanly furnished. She dropped her keys in the bowl by the door, kicked off her work boots, and padded across the hardwood floor to the small kitchen. Her phone buzzed. Multiple messages, all from base personnel. She ignored them for now, not ready to engage with the aftermath. Instead, she made chamomile tea, carried the mug to her small balcony, and sat in the darkness watching the city lights spread below her like scattered stars. This was her life now. Quiet, simple, uncomplicated by the weight of command, or the pressure of missions, or the constant awareness that every decision might mean the difference between people living or dying. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It wasn't the life she'd trained for. But it was the life she had, and she was learning slowly, painfully, to accept it. The tea cooled in her hands as night deepened around her. Tomorrow, everything would change again. But for tonight, Sarah Chen was just a woman sitting on a balcony drinking tea, remembering the past, and trying to make peace with the present. It would have to be enough, because it was all she had. Morning arrived with the subtlety of a flashbang grenade. Sarah's phone had been buzzing since 0600 texts, calls, voicemails, from people she'd never spoken to, reporters who'd somehow obtained her number, veterans organizations requesting interviews, and a surprising number of messages from trainees asking if she'd be willing to mentor them. She silenced the device after the 20th notification and went through her morning routine with mechanical precision. Shower, coffee, uniform, the same faded blue work shirt and pants she'd worn for 3 months, though now she wondered if Commander Hawthorne's promise of official documentation meant she'd be issued something different. She arrived at the base at 05:45, earlier than usual, hoping to complete some work before the inevitable attention storm. Security waved her through without the usual credential check, and she noticed the guard, a young petty officer she'd seen dozens of times, stood a little straighter as she passed. Word had spread faster than she'd anticipated. The maintenance office was empty when she arrived. Sarah collected her cleaning supplies, loaded her cart, and headed toward the combat training center. She had expected some level of acknowledgement, maybe a few salutes or respectful nods. What she didn't expect was to find 40 people waiting outside the CTC entrance when she arrived at 06:15. Master Chief Rodriguez stood at the front of the group, which included the entire training cadre, support staff, medical personnel, and at least 20 trainees. As Sarah approached with her cleaning cart, Rodriguez called out, "Attention on deck." 40 bodies snapped to attention simultaneously. 40 right hands rose in crisp salutes. Sarah stopped, her hands still gripping the cart handle. For a moment she considered deflecting, making a joke, trying to minimize the gesture. But these were her people warriors and support staff alike, showing respect in the only language the military truly understood. Refusing their salute would dishonor them, more than accepting it would discomfort her. She released the cart, stood at attention, and returned the salute with the precision drilled into her through 12 years of service. The gesture held for 3 seconds proper military courtesy before Rodriguez called, "Order arms." The formation relaxed but didn't disperse. Rodriguez approached his weathered face, showing something between respect and concern. "Captain, the commander wants to see you. 0700 in his office. Until then." He gestured to the waiting group. "Some people wanted to speak with you, if you're willing." Sarah glanced at her card at the cleaning supplies that represented her chosen routine, her deliberate simplicity. Then she looked at the faces watching her, young and old male and female officers, and enlisted all united by shared service and the revelation that had shattered their assumptions about who deserved respect. "I have 30 minutes, she said quietly. "Then I need to work." "Hold on, stop scrolling. What you're about to witness is the single most jaw-dropping reveal in military history. I'm not exaggerating. In exactly 2 minutes, everything you think you know gets shattered, but only if you keep watching. Don't click away now you've come this far. The payoff is 60 seconds away, and it will leave you speechless." Tommy was first to approach his 19-year-old face, showing a mixture of awe and desperate hope. "Captain Chen, yesterday when you helped me, when you gave me that look during the assembly drill, did you know I could do it? Or were you just being kind?" Sarah studied him carefully. "I knew you could do it because I saw how you handled failure. You didn't quit. You didn't make excuses. You took a breath and tried again. That's the most important skill in special operations, not physical strength or technical expertise, but the ability to fail and keep moving forward. You demonstrated that skill. I just acknowledged it." "I want to be a SEAL," Tommy said, his voice strengthening. "Everyone tells me I'm too small, too young, too inexperienced. But He caught himself. "I mean, you proved that assumptions about capability are often wrong. I proved that I trained harder than most people and got lucky more often than I deserved," Sarah corrected gently. "Don't romanticize what I did, Tommy. SEAL training will break you regardless of your size or gender. It's designed to break everyone. The question isn't whether you'll break, it's whether you'll put yourself back together and continue anyway. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am? Then you'll make it. But understand something, making it through BU to S is just the beginning. The real test comes in combat, when people's lives depend on your decisions, when exhaustion and fear and pain are constants, when going home alive means making choices that will haunt you forever." Her voice softened. "I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm trying to prepare you for the reality that the trident on your chest will be the heaviest thing you ever wear." Tommy nodded slowly, processing words that clearly carried more weight than any motivational speech could. "Thank you, Captain, for being honest." Other trainees approached with similar questions, seeking advice or validation, or simply wanting to be near someone who'd achieved what they aspired to become. Sarah answered each question thoughtfully, never rushing, never dismissing their concerns as trivial or naive. She remembered being 19, remembered the desperate hunger for knowledge from anyone who'd been there and survived, remembered how a single conversation with a veteran operator had changed her entire approach to training. Petty Officer Kim waited until the trainees dispersed before approaching. Her eyes were red-rimmed, suggesting she'd spent much of the night crying, or not sleeping, or both. "Captain, I need to apologize. Yesterday I told you not to let them get to you, like you needed protection, like you were helpless. I treated you like you were weak when you're probably the strongest person I've ever met." "You treated me with kindness," Sarah corrected. "That's never something to apologize for. Kindness is undervalued in military culture. We emphasize strength, resilience, aggression, all important traits. But kindness, compassion. The ability to see another person's humanity, regardless of their rank or position. Those are rare qualities. You have them. Don't apologize for that. Cultivate it." Kim's tears fell freely now. I gave you paper towels. You're a hero, and I gave you paper towels like you were some charity case." Sarah smiled, one of her rare, genuine smiles that transformed her entire face. Kim, I needed those paper towels. You saw someone struggling and you helped without expecting anything in return. That's the definition of service. That's what makes you valuable to this community. Never apologize for helping people. Dr. Martinez approached next, his medical professional demeanor firmly in place, but his eyes showing concern that went beyond clinical assessment. Sarah, I've scheduled your bi-weekly monitoring sessions. First one is tomorrow at 1400 hours, but I also wanted to discuss something else. He pulled out his tablet, scrolling to a document. I've been reviewing long-term outcomes for operators with blast-related hearing loss. There are new treatments, cochlear implant technologies, neuroplasticity training protocols, regenerative therapies. Some of them are experimental, but the early results are promising. If you're interested, I can get you into trials. Sarah considered this carefully. Would they restore full hearing? Unlikely, but they might improve functionality by 20 to 30%, maybe more. The technology is advancing rapidly. And the risk, minimal for most protocols. Some require minor surgical procedures. Others are purely therapeutic, training your brain to compensate more effectively for the sensory loss. Let me think about it, Sarah said. Right now, I'm focused on adapting to my current capabilities rather than chasing restoration of what I've lost. But I appreciate the offer. And the research. Martinez nodded, making notes on his tablet. The offer stands indefinitely. Whenever you're ready. Now, Courtman Jackson had been hanging back, but now he stepped forward with visible nervousness. Captain, I have a question that might be inappropriate. If so, please tell me and I'll drop it immediately. Go ahead. How do you do it? How do you go from leading classified missions to cleaning floors without losing yourself, without feeling like you've failed or been diminished or... He struggled for words. I'm thinking about getting out after this enlistment. I love being a corpsman, love the medical work, but I'm worried that civilian life will feel empty, that nothing will compare to the intensity and purpose of military service. You've made that transition. How? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, recognizing the genuine fear in his question. Jackson, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if I've successfully made that transition. Some days I feel at peace. Other days I feel like I'm suffocating in normalcy. The truth is, leaving active service feels like grieving. There are good days and bad days, progress and setbacks, moments of acceptance and moments of desperate longing for what was. She met his eyes directly. But here's what I've learned. Purpose isn't tied to a specific job or rank or mission. Purpose is what you choose to find valuable. For me right now, that's simple work that keeps me connected to the community while giving me space to heal. For you, it might be something completely different. The key is being honest with yourself about what you need rather than what you think you should want. That's really helpful. Thank you, Captain. And Jackson, there's no shame in staying in if military service is where you find purpose. There's also no shame in leaving if you need something different. Both choices are valid. Both are honorable. Commander Hawthorne appeared at the CTC entrance, his timing suggesting he'd been waiting for an appropriate moment to interrupt. Captain Chen, if you have a moment. Sarah glanced at Rodriguez, who nodded. Go ahead, Captain. Your cart will be here when you get back. Hawthorne's office was located in the administrative building, a 10-minute walk across the base. They walked in comfortable silence, Hawthorne maintaining a pace that accommodated Sarah's smaller stride without making it obvious. Other personnel they passed offered salutes or respectful nods, and Sarah returned each gesture with practiced courtesy. The office was functional rather than decorative, standard-issue desk filing cabinets, walls covered with unit photos and commendations. Hawthorne gestured to a chair and closed the door, creating privacy. Sarah, I'm going to be direct. The story is spreading beyond base boundaries. By this afternoon, it'll be on military news sites. By tomorrow, mainstream media will have picked it up. Decorated SEAL working as janitor is exactly the kind of human interest story that captures public attention. He leaned back against his desk. I need to know how you want to handle this. Do you want public affairs to manage media requests? Do you want to give interviews? Do you want me to lock everything down under operational security protocols? Can you lock it down? Partially. I can classify your mission. Details prevent discussion of specific operations, restrict access to your service records. But I can't prevent people from knowing you exist, from knowing the basic outline of your career, from being curious about why a decorated SEAL captain is working maintenance. Sarah thought about this carefully. The attention was inevitable. She'd known that the moment her shirt tore and exposed the tattoo. The question was how to manage it in a way that protected her privacy while respecting the public's legitimate interest. "I don't want to do interviews," she said finally. "I don't want to become a poster child for anything, not for women in combat, not for veteran employment, not for overcoming adversity. Those are all worthy causes, but I'm not equipped to be anyone's inspiration right now. I'm still figuring out my own path." "Understood. I'll have public affairs draft a standard statement. Captain Chen served with distinction and is currently employed on base in a civilian capacity. She values her privacy and requests that media respect her decision not to grant interviews." "That should buy you some breathing room." "Thank you, sir." Hawthorne pulled a folder from his desk drawer and slid it across to Sarah. "This arrived this morning. Classified courier. Your name on the label." Sarah opened the folder carefully. Inside was a single photograph showing 17 people in tactical gear, faces obscured by combat lighting and poor image quality, standing in front of what looked like a cave system. Coordinates were printed at the bottom: 34.7089 Dix and 69.1061 Distaliao e Kabul Province, Afghanistan. Below the photo, a single typed line: 17 contractors trapped, Taliban closing in. Phoenix, we need you one more time. Sarah's hands tightened on the folder. She looked at Hawthorne. "Who delivered this classified courier? No name, no unit designation. The routing codes trace back to JSOX, but no specific office. Someone with serious clearance and serious connections wants you to see this. It's been 18 months since I retired. Why now? Why me?" "Because Phoenix never failed," Hawthorne said quietly. "Because when everything else has been tried and nothing has worked, someone remembered that there's a team, there's a person who went into impossible situations and brought everyone home. Every single time." Sarah stared at the photograph, her tactical mind automatically analyzing details. Cave system meant limited entry and exit points. Kabul province meant navigating through Taliban-controlled territory. 17 contractors meant a large package to extract, probably too large for standard exfiltration protocols. The whole scenario screamed trap or desperation, or both. "I can't do this," she said more to herself than to Hawthorne. "I'm retired. I'm healing. I'm building a life that doesn't include combat or command or the weight of people's lives hanging on my decisions." "That's your right," Hawthorne said. "You've served enough, done enough, sacrificed enough. Nobody can ask more of you. But those 17 people are going to die if someone doesn't extract them. And whoever sent you this folder believes you're the only person who can do it successfully." Sarah closed the folder, pushing it across the desk. "I need time to think. The folder says you have 12 hours. After that, the tactical window closes and rescue becomes recovery." 12 hours. Sarah's laugh was bitter. "To decide whether to come out of retirement for a mission that will probably kill me and definitely destroy any chance I have at normal life. 12 hours to choose between peace and duty. That's not enough time." "It never is," Hawthorne agreed. "But it's what you have." Sarah stood taking the folder with her, despite her earlier rejection. "Thank you for being honest, Commander." "Sarah, whatever you decide, you have my full support. If you choose to stay retired, I'll help protect your privacy and rebuild your quiet life. If you choose to accept this mission, I'll provide whatever resources and cover you need. No judgment either way." She nodded and left the office, walking back across the base toward the CTC. Her cleaning cart waited exactly where she'd left it. Rodriguez standing nearby like a silent guardian. He saw her face and the folder in her hands and asked no questions. Some conversations happened without words between people who'd seen enough to know when someone was wrestling with impossible choices. Sarah resumed her cleaning routine, the mechanical work, providing comfort even as her mind churned through tactical analysis and risk assessment and emotional calculus. Mop the floors, wipe down equipment, organize supplies, simple tasks, controllable outcomes, no lives hanging in the balance. But the folder sat in her cart like a lead weight impossible to ignore. Commander Hawthorne pulled up the base legal database on his desktop later that morning, searching for precedent on personnel violations. The system designed for military legal research and JAG consultations flagged 17 similar cases of instructor misconduct. Harassment of veteran personnel, he read aloud to his empty office. Each one resulted in courts-martial or Article 15 proceedings. Then he clicked through the case law, the kind of specialized legal resources only available through military justice education platforms. Drake's about to learn a very expensive lesson. He muttered, making notes for the disciplinary hearing scheduled for 1,400 hours. The afternoon brought its own complications. Drake, Morrison, Williams, and Hayes stood at attention in Hawthorne's office, faces showing varying degrees of anxiety and contrition. Jessica Park was notably absent. She'd called in sick, though everyone suspected she was simply too ashamed to face official reprimand. Hawthorne didn't sit. He stood before them, hands clasped behind his back, his command presence filling the small office. "Gentlemen, we have a problem. Yesterday evening you harassed a decorated combat veteran. You mocked her appearance, questioned her competence, created a hostile work environment, and generally failed to demonstrate the values we claim to instill in SEAL candidates. This is unacceptable." Drake spoke first, his voice steady despite visible tension. "Sir, there's no excuse for our conduct. We failed. I failed. I let arrogance and assumptions override basic respect and human decency. I'm prepared to accept whatever punishment you deem appropriate." That's very noble, Instructor Drake. But punishment isn't the point. The point is ensuring this never happens again. Not just with Captain Chen, but with anyone: janitors, supply clerks, contractors, civilian personnel. Everyone on this base deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of their job title or apparent status. Morrison straightened slightly. "Sir, permission to speak." "Granted. We've been discussing this, all of us, and we've developed a proposal." He pulled out a tablet displaying a document. "New mandatory training for all instructors: unconscious bias recognitions, respect in military culture, civilian-military interaction protocols, 3 hours quarterly. We want to volunteer to help develop the curriculum and participate as both students and instructors. We want to turn our failure into something constructive." Hawthorne took the tablet, scrolling through the proposal. It was detailed, thoughtful, clearly developed through multiple hours of genuine effort. "This is good work, comprehensive, but it doesn't address the immediate issue: you harassed a superior officer." "We understand that, sir," Williams said. "We're prepared for official reprimand, for it to go in our permanent records for whatever consequences you decide. We're not trying to avoid responsibility. We just want to ensure our mistake becomes a teaching opportunity rather than just a disciplinary footnote." Hayes added quietly, "Captain Chen told me everyone deserves a second chance. She gave me one. We want to earn it by making sure nobody else has to experience what she did." Hawthorne studied them carefully, seeing genuine contrition mixed with determination to do better. These were good men who'd made bad choices, now trying to correct course. The military didn't succeed by destroying people who made mistakes. It succeeded by helping them learn and improve. "Here's what's going to happen," Hawthorne said. "Each of you will receive a formal letter of counseling in your personnel file. Not as serious as Article 15, but serious enough that it will impact promotion boards and future assignments. You'll also develop and implement the training program you've proposed with oversight from Dr. Martinez and Master Chief Rodriguez. And finally," he paused for emphasis, "you'll personally apologize to Captain Chen, not in writing, face to face. She deserves to hear directly from each of you that you understand what you did wrong and how you'll do better." "Yes, sir," they said in unison. "Dismissed. Except you, Drake." The others filed out, leaving Drake alone with Hawthorne. The commander's expression softened slightly. "Drake, you're one of my best instructors. Tough, demanding, effective at preparing candidates for the reality of SEAL operations. I don't want to lose you, but I need to know, can you change? Can you look at people like Captain Chen and see capability instead of limitations? Can you judge based on performance rather than appearance?" Drake met Hawthorne's eyes directly. "Sir, yesterday broke something in me. Or maybe it fixed something that was broken all along. I grew up being dismissed and underestimated. I should have known better than to do that to others. I did know better. I just forgot. Or stopped caring. Or let arrogance override empathy." He took a breath. I can change. I will change. Because Captain Chen showed me what I should have been all along, someone who leads with respect rather than intimidation. Someone who sees people's potential rather than their limitations. I want to be that person. I want to be worthy of wearing this uniform again. Then make it happen, Hawthorne said. You have one chance. Use it well. I will, sir. Thank you. Sarah worked through the afternoon, her movements automatic, while her mind churned through the impossible decision represented by the folder in her cart. Extract 17 contractors from Taliban-controlled territory in Kabul province. A mission that would require tactical precision, exceptional luck, and probably cost her life. Or stay retired, continue healing, build the quiet existence she'd been constructing over 18 months of civilian life. Still processing what you just saw? Good. Because this story isn't over, not by a long shot. There's a part 2 coming that takes this to a whole new level, and it involves a mission even more dangerous than anything Sarah faced before. Click the next video in the description. You need to see how this ends. At 17:30, as she was finishing her shift, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her press accept. Captain Chen. The voice was male, gravely carrying authority earned through decades of service. This is Colonel Richard Morrison, JSOX. You received the package. I did. Then you know the situation. 17 contractors trapped in cave complex outside Kabul. Taliban forces closing in. Every military option is politically impossible right now. Too visible, too likely to trigger international incidents. But a retired operator working as private security consultant, that's different. That's deniable. That's also suicide, Sarah said flatly. 17 people is too large a package for covert extraction. The Taliban aren't idiots, they'll have the area locked down. And even if I could get them out, I'd need support transport medical weapons intelligence. I'm not Magic Colonel. I'm just one person who got lucky more than she deserved. You're Phoenix. You don't fail. Phoenix was a team, 5 operators working in perfect coordination. I was the team leader, but I didn't do it alone. They're scattered now, retired, reassigned, 1 dead. I can't rebuild Phoenix in 12 hours. Morrison's voice softened slightly. I know about Marcus. I know what you've lost. I wouldn't ask this if there were any other option. But there isn't. These 17 people, some of them are former military, former operators, who took contracting jobs to pay bills and support families. There are people, Sarah, and they're going to die unless someone brings them home. Sarah closed her eyes, Marcus's face appearing in her mind with painful clarity. She remembered conversations they'd had about duty and sacrifice, about when it was right to walk away, and when walking away meant abandoning the values that defined you. Marcus would have gone. He would have said that one more mission, one more rescue, one more chance to bring people home was worth whatever it cost. But Marcus was dead, and Sarah was trying to stay alive. I need the full tactical brief, she heard herself saying. Terrain analysis, enemy force estimates, support assets available, extraction timelines. Everything you have. I can get you that in 30 minutes. Does that mean? It means I'll review the information and make an informed decision. That's all I can promise right now. That's all I'm asking. Stand by. The call ended. Sarah stood alone in the now empty CTC, surrounded by cleaning supplies and weapons racks and training equipment, balanced on the knife edge between 2 lives, the one she'd been building and the one pulling her back into darkness. Her phone buzzed again. Not a call this time, but a text message from an unknown number, tactical brief attached. Secure link. 24-hour access. Coordinates, enemy positions, extraction routes, support assets. Everything you need to make the decision. Morris and Sarah clicked the link. Her phone screen filled with maps, satellite imagery, intelligence reports. She'd looked at hundreds of mission briefs over her career, but this one carried special weight because she knew, absolutely knew, that reviewing this information meant she was already halfway to accepting the mission. She should have deleted it. Should have called Morrison back and said no, told him to find someone else, explained that she'd given enough and earned the right to walk away. But instead, she scrolled through the tactical analysis, her mind automatically cataloging entry points and extraction routes, assessing enemy capabilities and identifying vulnerabilities, building operational plans that might give 17 trapped contractors a chance at survival. At 1800 hours, Master Chief Rodriguez found her still in the CTC, sitting on a bench with her phone, tactical maps displayed on the small screen. He didn't ask what she was looking at. He simply sat down beside her and waited. "They want me to go back," Sarah said finally. "One more mission. 17 people trapped. Nobody else can or will extract them. And you're considering it." "I'm an idiot for considering it. I'm retired, healing, building a life that doesn't include combat or the constant possibility of death. Going back would destroy all of that." Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. Then, "Can I tell you a story?" "Please." "I had a team guy once. Good operator, great person. He did 4 deployments, earned his share of commendations, served with distinction. After his 4th deployment, he told me he was done. Said he'd given enough seen, enough lost, enough. Said he needed to focus on his family and his mental health and rebuilding himself. And I supported that decision because it was the right one for him." Rodriguez paused. 6 months later, his old team got hit hard during an operation. 3 KIA, 5 wounded. And this guy, this retired operator who had earned his peace, he couldn't live with himself. Couldn't accept that he'd been safe while his brothers were dying. Eventually, the guilt consumed him more than the combat ever had. What happened to him? He ate his gun in his garage while his wife was at the grocery store. Left a note saying he was sorry, but he couldn't carry the weight anymore. Sarah absorbed this story, understanding its implications. "You're saying that walking away from this mission will haunt me, that I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if those 17 people died because I chose comfort over duty. I'm saying that only you know what you can live with. Some people walk away and find peace. Others walk away and find only guilt. You need to figure out which one you'll be. And if I go and die, then you die having lived consistently with your values, which is more than most people can say." Sarah laughed bitterly. "That's cold comfort for being dead." "Yeah, but it's the only comfort I can offer." They sat together as evening deepened around them, 2 warriors who'd seen too much and carried too much, bound by shared understanding that civilians would never fully comprehend. Finally, Sarah stood, decision made, or perhaps inevitable all along. "I need to go home, pack, make arrangements. If I'm doing this, I have 12 hours to prepare." Rodriguez stood as well. "Whatever you need from me, you have it. Equipment intelligence, cover story, extraction support, anything. I need you to look after my things if I don't come back. My apartment, Marcus's photos, the few personal items that matter. Can you do that?" "I can, but you're coming back, Sarah. Phoenix always comes home." "Phoenix had a team. This time it's just me." "No," Rodriguez said firmly. "This time you have an entire base worth of people who finally understand what you're capable of and what you've sacrificed. You're not alone anymore, Captain. Even if you're the only one on the ground, you have support here. Don't forget that." Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She collected her cleaning supplies for the last time. Somehow she knew she wouldn't be returning to this work, regardless of whether she survived the mission, and walked out of the CTC into the California night. Her apartment felt different when she returned. Smaller, temporary, like a way station rather than a home. She packed efficiently tactical gear from the closet where it had waited for 18 months, weapons she'd kept clean and maintained, despite having no intention of using them, again equipment that represented a life she'd thought she'd left behind. At 2200 hours, her phone rang again. Morrison. "Captain, I need your decision. The tactical window is closing." Sarah looked around her apartment at the photograph of Marcus, at the simple life she'd been building, at the peace she'd been trying to cultivate. Then she thought about 17 people trapped in a cave, about families who would lose husbands and fathers and brothers if nobody went to bring them home, about the values that had defined her entire adult life. That you didn't leave people behind, that service meant sacrifice, that some missions were worth whatever they cost. "I'm in," she said quietly. "Send me the full operational plan. I'll be at the airfield in 6 hours." "Thank you, Captain. Transport is arranged, support assets are being positioned. You'll have everything we can give you." "It won't be enough," Sarah said. "It never is, but we'll make it work." She hung up and finished packing her movements, automatic muscle memory, from dozens of pre-mission preparations taking over. Check weapons, count ammunition, verify communications equipment, pack medical supplies, ensure every piece of gear was exactly where it needed to be, because in combat, fumbling for equipment could mean death. At 0200, She stood in her empty apartment one last time, touching Marcus's photograph, whispering words of love and apology and hope that somehow, wherever he was, he understood why she was choosing this. Then she picked up her gear bag, locked the door, and drove to the airfield where a nondescript military transport waited to carry her back into the life she'd thought she'd escaped. Master Chief Rodriguez was there, along with Commander Hawthorne and, surprisingly, Drake Morrison Williams and Hayes. They stood at attention as she approached, offering salutes that acknowledged not just her rank, but her courage in choosing duty over comfort. "We couldn't let you leave without saying goodbye," Hawthorne said, "and thank you for your service, for your sacrifice, for being willing to go back into hell one more time." Drake stepped forward, his face showing emotions he struggled to contain. "Captain, I don't have the right to ask anything of you, but if you make it back, I'd be honored if you'd let me buy you a beer and listen to whatever wisdom you're willing to share. Because yesterday you taught me more about leadership and strength than 4 years of instructor duty, and I don't want to forget that lesson." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "If I make it back, Drake, I'll take you up on that. But right now, I need to focus on the mission, on bringing 17 people home. Everything else can wait." She boarded the transport gear bag over her shoulder, walking into the cargo bay where she'd spend the next 12 hours in transit. The engines spooled up, the ramp closed, and the aircraft lifted into the night sky, carrying Captain Sarah Chen back to war. Below in the apartment she'd left behind, Marcus's photograph remained on the wall, a silent witness to love and loss and the choices that defined who we are when everything else is stripped away. The simple life she'd been building would wait, uncertain whether its creator would return to claim it or whether it would become a memorial to someone who'd chosen duty over survival one final time. The transport flew east through darkness, carrying Phoenix toward Kabul, toward 17 trapped contractors, toward a mission that would either prove that legends were real or that even the best operators were ultimately human, fallible mortal. In the cargo bay, Sarah Chen sat alone among her weapons and gear, eyes closed, breathing steady, preparing her mind and body for what awaited. She thought about Marcus, about her team, about the 73 lives saved in Helmand, and the 17 missions that had defined her career, about the choice she'd just made and the price it might demand. And as the transport carried her toward an uncertain future, Sarah whispered one final prayer, not for her own survival, but for the strength to bring home the 17 people who waited in darkness, hoping that somewhere in the world, someone still cared enough to risk everything for their lives. "Phoenix," she murmured to herself, touching the tattoo hidden beneath her tactical vest. One more time, one more mission, bring them home. The transport flew on through the night, carrying hope into hell, carrying one more chance for 17 people to see their families again, carrying the living proof that service transcends rank and gender and circumstance, that real warriors don't advertise, don't seek glory, don't count the cost. They just answer the call, every single time.